Hello, and welcome to TP's Music Talk Podcast. My name is Ryan Ford.
And I'm Nick Replinger.
And you can find us at our website, tpmusictalkpod.wordpress.com.
And you can also find us at anchor.fm/TP Music Talk Podcast and other major podcasting platforms by searching for TP's Music Talk Podcast.
You can find us on other social media as well, like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, and others by searching for TP Music Talk Podcast or for TP Music Talk Pod on Twitter. Just look for our logo.
And you can also email us at tpmusictalkpodcast@gmail.com.
We also have shared playlists on Apple Music and Spotify that you can check out by searching TP's Music Talk Podcast as well.
And don't forget to click the link in the description and leave us a voice message on Anchor. And feel free to leave us a message or a review anywhere you're listening. It really helps us out. And don't forget, donations are always appreciated. You can find a link to donate in the description of any of our episodes.
No part of our show can be reproduced without permission or written consent.
Hey Ryan, what are you doing this weekend?
Yeah, man, I'm hanging out with McKay. We're going to take a look at his latest engravings and talk about giveaways for I Engrave stuff.
Oh yeah, that's awesome, especially about those giveaways. And you know, I was on the internet the other day and I saw these ads for these other engraving services, and man, their prices are expensive.
Yeah, man. A lot of those other engraving companies will charge you up the wazoo for things. But I've noticed that McKay's company, they have items that are priced very reasonably, making it affordable, especially this year, to get a personalized and really impactful gift. Get your parents something that is heartfelt with your signature, or you can even do a letter in your own handwriting on something.
Oh yeah, that's right. And you can even send a scan of your handwriting on a letter, and they can engrave it onto a sign, a bottle, or whatever you could think of. The possibilities are endless with them.
Yeah, and right now, if you're in the checkout area, you can type in TP10 in all caps in the promo code box, and you'll get an extra 10% off. A gift from us. Go to iengravestuff.com today. Hey everybody, welcome back to Transmitter. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Nick.
And today we have a very special guest who, we'll introduce him in just a minute. I just wanted to get a couple things out of the way first. Wanted to go over a little bit of housekeeping. Just wanted to let you guys know and just say thank you for bearing with us. I know it's been a slow schedule thus far this year with getting the episodes out. I feel like it's been a very productive year for us. We've already done a whole lot. We've got this new studio sort of up and running, and I say studio, we've got a little bit of soundproofing, but we're getting there, and we've got some new plugins and some new, tools to play with, and I just feel like we're getting better and better all the time. And last year, we didn't start the podcast until like the middle of the year last year, and I feel like we've already gotten a few episodes out this year. I feel like we're really starting to pump on all cylinders again. So anyway, thanks for bearing with us, and feel free to leave us some more voice messages. And yeah, feel free to just reach out to us in any way on any of our social medias. We really appreciate that, and we want to hear what you have to say, good or bad. So
yeah, and I'd also like to add to that, when you reach out to us, Ryan and I were thinking we're going to come to a close to this, I guess you could call it a season, and we want to change gears a little bit, maybe talk about something else, whether that be hip hop or classical music or something. But if there's a topic that you would like us to speak about in the future, please reach out to us. We want to know what you guys want to hear. So please reach out to us, whether it's email or an Anchor or any of the other platforms that you listen to us on. We value your guys' input.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. So yeah, and I'll let Nick introduce our guest.
All right. So today we have a great visitor here today. His name is John Cassler. And if you recognize the last name Cassler, that is because he is also our good friend Joe Cassler's younger brother. Say hi, John.
Hello.
Yeah, so John, he is a very avid photographer and cinematographer, and he's also happens to be the official photographer and cinematographer for Blix 10. So I've worked a lot with John personally with all that stuff, and also we've been roommates before too, so I know John pretty well, and he's a great guy, and he's got all these great things that you can check out on YouTube. He has his own YouTube channel. One of them's called Construction Rocks. I don't know if you still do that one?
Yeah, I mean, I still have it on my YouTube channel, but I haven't recently been making new episodes, so, but you can enjoy the old stuff. And if you really want me to do it, well, I'll do it.
Oh yeah, you got to really twist his arm on that one. But no, John is quite the handyman. Even a couple of years ago, I even helped him, put on the shingles on his roof. I helped him re-roof their entire house.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I got paid for it, so I was fine with that. So,
But I got to do it for free. So.
Yeah, but yeah. So John's got all these different things. Do you have any other things that you're working on right now that you want to tell us about, John? Just about your background as a photographer and cinematographer? Or?
Okay, I guess as far as what I'm doing right now I'm trying to get myself more out there because so far, like Nick has been saying, I've been working with Blix 10, but recently I've been working with, I'm pretty sure you remember from a previous episode with Private School Boys, did their band photos, and I've been trying to get more out there, I guess you can say. And so I'm thinking of a name for my media studio and thinking of doing a website and, to help people get great videos and great photos. So that's what I'm thinking right now. So you wanted to know the background of why I like doing media and everything, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll go back to the beginning. I was actually about 5 years old. This was in 2002. It was in February 2002. My family and we went on a train to California to see some relatives of ours. And I think it was either my mom or my dad. They handed me one of those disposable film cameras, if you remember that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And they said, here, take some pictures. And so I specifically remember taking these photos on this train. I took pictures of my brother Joe, I took pictures of my parents, I took pictures of seats in front of me and my foot, that kind of stuff.
You gotta have a random foot picture on that disposable camera. So.
Oh yeah, and I ran out of film in the first 15 minutes, but that's 5-year-old me. Strangely enough, however, I didn't get back into taking photographs until I was about 11 years old, actually. When I was 11 years old, about that time, my family got a digital compact camera, and they assigned me to be the photographer of the family whenever we go on family trips or whenever there's something exciting going on. They would say, you're the camera guy, so you take the pictures.
And I can definitely testify of that. John has shown me all these just random things. Like there's even this really cool video, I think it's on YouTube, where when he was living in Texas and he just went and made this really cool shooting video with him and his friend, and they're just shooting all these different kinds of guns, and it's so epic, even though they're just shooting guns in the middle of nowhere, Texas. It's this little epic little video that you can watch.
Shout out to my friend Peter Williams. I love you, bro.
Yeah.
So we were good buddies, and we were like, you got guns, I got the camera, let's shoot. But anyway, back to my childhood. So I took lots of pictures for my family. Went to California, went to South Dakota, all these places in the U.S. We even went to Australia, and I took pictures there. So it was a lot of fun. So when I graduated high school, that's when I retired from being the family photographer, since I'm going to be on my own into college and all that stuff. But during that time in which I was taking pictures for my family, I tried, as the years went on, to try to make more beautiful pictures to really capture the moment in just one frame, If you remember those low compact digital cameras, they're like the size of a wallet. And so there's only so much that you can do with that camera. It wasn't until around 2017 when I was in college that, I decided to get my own DSLR camera, or if you don't know what that is, it's basically those fancy cameras where you can adjust lens and replace lenses to get better pictures. So I got my first one in 2017, and ever since then, I've been watching online tutorials, I've been reading tons of books, and I've been practicing over and over again with this camera. I've been practicing with my camera, and I got a better camera later on, and I've been perfecting my camera skills, and that's where I am today with photography, at least. When it comes to video production and video editing, that's a different story. Actually, believe it or not, my older brother Joe, he did lots of small video projects for his Boy Scout troop and for high school. He even made
I've seen those, yeah.
he made like a video for his Spanish class.
That's my favorite one.
And so it had like lightsabers and all these special effects on it. And, me not knowing how it all worked, I was just fascinated with the process. I would watch him do the editings, chop up, put this here, make it, sound better over there. And I was really excited whenever he would get done and I would see the final product. Later on, I did something strange. I took the family digital camera and I would do these strange destruction videos where I would hit something and look back at it frame by frame to see the destruction unfolding. I was pretty weird back then.
Well, just to give a little background, like John is all about, construction and explosions. I remember one time, John, when I was still, rooming with John and Joe at their house, their mom came to visit. She took us out to dinner. And I remember we were just driving in the car, and then all of a sudden, John just starts laughing, and of course, John and Joe's mom starts like, John, what are you laughing at? And it's just like explosions.
Yeah, I was really into Mythbusters too, so that added on to it. So,
and while I didn't really like grow up with you, or you and I have known each other for a while now, but we haven't really like hung out or anything. I don't know too many of these stories, and I haven't seen like all these videos or anything. But what I have seen, and what I can definitely attest to, is like how you've kind of perfected you're always evolving, right? But I am always blown away by the pictures that I see that you've taken and video. They're just stunning. And I think that there's nobody better that we could have on the show today to kind of talk about all of this and how it relates to music videos and music in general. Yeah. So,
yeah, and that kind of leads into what the next question we want to ask you is like, what music did you grow up with and what are your musical tastes?
Okay, yeah. Let's see. I guess I didn't finish, though, about how I got into video production.
You've heard it a million times, but that's because it's worth it.
I engrave stuff.
Need something engraved?
I engrave stuff.
Need some gifts for holidays and birthdays that are actually cool and can be totally personalized to your liking?
I engrave stuff. Check out their social medias. I see an Instagram giveaway very often, and they're actually legit. Connect by going to iengravestuff.com.
Another thing they have is an engraving service. If you have a thermos or a bottle or a baseball glove or anything you can think of, all you have to do is get in touch with the awfully friendly people from iengravestuff.com, and one of their laser experts can get an estimate to you. It's super simple, and they work hard to make it easy to explore your engraving ideas.
And if you go to iengravestuff.com and you're shopping, be sure to type in TP10 in all caps in the promo code box at checkout. That'll get you 10% off. Check out iengravestuff today.
Anyway, so I would observe Joe with his video productions, and I would just be like, wow, this is so cool. And so when I was about my junior year in high school, I created my first video project, actually, for my English class. For the project, we had to do something to portray the theme of the book that we were reading. I personally read the book Between a Rock and a Hard Place. If you don't know, it's also called 127 Hours. The movie's based off of it. So anyway.
Is that the one with James Franco?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
And so in the middle of the night, I made these props. I made a rock. I made canyon walls. And I just took that little compact digital camera and I would literally duct tape it to like the canyon wall that I created just to get the aerial shots. And I would also put on the rock and all these crazy angles and stuff like that. So it was really fun. And then later on, when I went into college, I created these fun videos, just for the heck of it. I made a video with Joe for Halloween because we were bored.
Oh gosh. Yes.
I made a Office parody.
Go check that one out. That one is seriously so good,
Yeah,
and it's gotten
hilarious.
so many views. I think it's like
It's like 40,000 views now.
yeah, and like in that type of genre because it had to do with A Quiet Place and The Office. And so when that The Quiet Place first came out, there was a whole bunch of these movies that were kind of mixed that in, and like John's I think is the second most viewed on there. I think the only one that's got higher views is from the actual NBC channel. So
Yeah, I love that one. I laughed so hard the first time I watched that.
Yeah, that was really fun to do. It literally took me an entire day to do that. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. So then Blix 10 came along, and I was just sitting on the couch while Joe and his bandmates, Nick was there actually, were practicing for the first concert, and I was like, you know what? I should just record the entire concert, to help them out. And so I just took one of those digital compact cameras. This was before I had the DSLR actually, and I just practiced shooting them while they were practicing, and then Joe rented a DSLR at BYU, and I got to shoot with that, and it was really fun, really it kind of changed the way that I viewed photography and cinematography. It was kind of like the first click in which I really started to accelerate with learning about how photos were made, how to make beautiful videos. So yeah, I got to thank Blix 10 for really getting me on that path. And
Oh, and we've loved having you be our cinematographer. I mean, everything that John does, it's top notch. It's like we don't even need to go to a professional because we already got a professional on our side.
well, thank you.
Like my personal favorite is the music video for It Hurts by Blix 10. That one is just a beautiful, like you get so many different seasons and just different scenes, and it's just kind of a lyric video. I definitely recommend checking it out.
And as the writer of that song, I was very happy with how it turned out. I couldn't be more pleased with it.
No, thank you. Yeah, that was a fun one to make.
And maybe one more thing, at least one more thing that we can talk about is the photo contest that you've been a part of.
Oh yeah.
Like you helped shoot videos for the Faith Matters organization.
Oh yeah, I did.
And then I think you even submitted some photos for like the local news, something like that, and those were beautiful.
Oh yeah, everybody had those. Everybody submitted beautiful pictures, and I thought, might as well submit mine.
Yeah.
And it definitely blended in with everybody else's pictures. They were all very beautiful. But I know how mine were taken.
Yeah, well, don't be so modest. I personally love them. Did you actually win that one, or?
And I never heard anything back, so.
Well, I voted for you.
So did I, but
Yeah, well, appreciate it, guys. All right, you got any questions?
Yeah, so I guess we've kind of talked about your background and upbringing, but we didn't really talk too much. And I think Nick sort of asked you, what kind of music did you grow up with, and how does all this connect to music for you? And I want to hear about that.
Okay. Music taste. For pretty much all of my life, I've grown up listening to oldie music. So music from the 60s, the 70s, a little bit of the 80s. I had that as childhood music because my parents grew up during that era. And so I would listen to these rock bands and really jam out. I remember really liking Hotel California as one of my favorite songs back then.
Oh, that's got to be one of the best songs ever.
Yeah. And so, funny enough, though, when I was about 10 years old, roughly, my mother wanted me to take drum lessons, actually, and I agreed. And so, for the longest time, I actually took rock and roll drum lessons from the Dave Wilbur's Rock Lab in Orem. So yeah, I got to go check him out. So that's where I learned drum skills, and it's really helped me to really connect better with music because when you're a drummer, you have to know the beat and when to come in with the crashes and the toms. And so it really helped me appreciate music better. Still during this time, I was more into rock, and so it wasn't until when I was about a teenager that I got into heavy metal, actually. And
Okay.
one of my favorite bands is actually Breaking Benjamin.
love them. They're my second all-time favorite.
Yeah.
Well, and they're very popular just in general, I think.
Oh yeah, and also we went and saw them live.
Yeah, that was the first
last
time.
year.
That was the first time I saw them live, and it was awesome.
It were incredible, absolutely incredible.
And so really got into heavy metal. Listen to Joe's music now and then. Some of them I didn't like, some of them I really liked, like Metallica. Thinking some other ones. Oh yeah, Avenged Sevenfold, those types of bands.
Oh yeah, that was like Joe's number one back in high school.
Of course, got to mention 3 Days Grace.
yes, my all-time favorite. Yeah.
So that was definitely the teenager era of music was heavy metal. In more recent years, I've come to appreciate soundtrack music a lot.
Yeah, I love soundtrack music too.
When I listen to soundtrack music, I'm just blown away by the orchestra and by how the symphonies just really go together. You can imagine a scene without even seeing it on screen.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, we want to talk about soundtracks at some point and go into that.
Definitely got to do that.
Yeah.
So gone into soundtracks. I've actually gone into like old style country music a little bit.
I'm gonna have to shun you there.
Old style
country.
Well,
it's not all. It's not like the modern country music where it goes roll down, we're down and cruise. I don't know. With the old timey one, it kind of sounds more authentic, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand that, but for me personally, it's just the deep twangy voice. That is what gets me. That I can't listen to it.
That's the one genre that we haven't really breached on this show yet.
You got to be brave. You got to be brave.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to decide, like, when are we going to tackle that? Because...
Well, I'm not saying that we're not going to talk about it, but that doesn't mean I'd have to like it, though.
Yeah, well, and I just don't feel like either of us are very prepared to talk about it because we don't know the history too well. But maybe down the road, and if it's something you guys want.
Yeah, just like I said, when I say country music, it's like a very small list of country music, all right? It's not like a whole list.
Well, good, because I was about to judge you.
I judged you a long time ago, John, so...
How about that? Well, along with country music, there's some modern music that, you know, is really catchy and I like. But really, kind of the music that I've never really gone into is like death metal scream. You know, I can't hear what they're saying. It's just... it's like, okay.
Well, you got it right there, John.
It's an art in itself. I mean, it's, you know, to each his own, I suppose.
Yeah.
But if I don't understand the lyrics, I'm like, okay, bye.
And a lot of people are like that, you know. I mean,
I love, you know, the heavy distorted guitars and the bass and the drums from those type of. I'm kind of like you. I don't really care much for screamo. Like the most screamo I like is probably about as much as Breaking Benjamin does. You know, where they scream just here and there. I like that, but when it's pure screamo, I don't care too much for it.
Yeah, same here. It's
to me, they have to have talent. You know, if they're not good at screaming, it doesn't really do it for me. But
yeah. And I'm sorry to say this, Ryan, but I'm not a big rap person, so...
That's okay. I mean, it's not for everybody, for sure. I mean, that's why we talk about music and why we try and diversify what we talk about. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, yeah, pretty much a lot of music I like, except for those few that I talked about, so...
Yeah. Well, and then we did want to talk, I mean, before we kind of get into the meat and the potatoes of this episode, I wanted to talk a little bit about media technology, just very, very briefly, and how film evolved. Maybe just kind of like a nutshell of media technology so that people can understand as we get into the history of these music videos.
Okay, I got you. So I'll talk about it very briefly.
Yeah, nutshell, like very, very...
Peanuts.
So yeah, media technology. In order for you guys to understand why they made the music videos the way they did, you have to understand the media technology behind each era. Years. So in order for you to understand why they made music videos the way they did at a particular time, you have to understand the technology back then. So I want to start out briefly by talking about the mother of all media technology, which is film. Film has been around the longest. It's been invented since 1826, and it became used for video production in around 1890s.
1826. That's when you were born, right, Nick?
That's when your mother was born.
Whoa, she's been on this show. How dare you?
Well, so was my father, so.
And so, yeah. There's two types of film. There's negative film and there's positive film. Negative film, well, I guess before I talk about that, film is essentially this plastic strip that contains chemicals that are sensitive to light. That's essentially it. So for negative film, it's essentially when you take a picture or when you take a video, it captures the image and it creates an inverse of what the scene actually looks like. So whatever is light is dark, whatever is red is green, etc. And that was just mainly for prints. And you can't really show that on screen. That looked too weird. Unless if you wanted to. But the other type of film, which has mostly been used for video production, is something called positives. Positives, essentially, the chemicals are right, and so that when light hits it, whatever the camera captures is what you're going to get at the end of it. So you can project that onto the wall. They've actually made slide projector pictures with the same type of film. It's essentially the same thing. The mechanics of it are fairly simple. Essentially, the film runs through these mechanical gears and light shines through a particular frame or a picture and it projects on screen, and then the next picture comes and then the lights hit that and it goes, and so on and so forth. And when you do it fast enough, it creates the illusion of movement.
Which is where video comes in.
Exactly. And so here's kind of a video I actually took at the BYU Broadcasting Building. That's actually a 1900 video projector right there. And
wow.
So
big.
The film,
and we'll link these photos and videos, everything that we're talking about today. And sorry, I don't mean to derail you, John, but everything that we're talking about today, this will be kind of a different episode because we're going to leave links in the description. We're going to post photos. There's going to be photos on Facebook and Instagram and all social media, kind of just showcasing this and everything that John's talking about today. So,
and you'll just be pausing it if you want to go along as you listen to us.
So this is the projector. Kind of interesting, though. This is very technical, but essentially you have to actually show the picture twice before the next frame goes on. So that's why there's an open slot and then a closed slot and then an open slot, so that a picture will show here and then the same picture will show here and then the next picture will come and then the next picture will show there, and it goes on. Because if you do it just one at a time, it's too fast for the eye to see and it looks weird. But that's a very technical thing. And so, yeah, kind of the technical thing with film, black and white, it's essentially silver halide that changes color. With color film, it's different layers of color-sensitive chemicals that are mixed in with silver compounds. And so each layer reacts to a different color. And when you merge it all together, it creates a color print or a color projecting image. And color film has definitely been a very difficult thing to create, and we may talk about it later, but let me talk about the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages is when you do the chemical process right, when you do everything right, the images are astounding. So why do you think film has been around for so long? It's still present even today, and it's mainly because film has this beautiful look to it that was hard to compete with until digital technology came along. And so you have different options for different colors.
Well, and a lot of the digital stuff, I feel like these days they're actually trying to go back and copy film, which is kind of interesting. And anyway, I didn't want to get too much into the, and I know that you could talk about that just all night. And I didn't mean to totally derail everything, but I just feel like people should kind of know what film is all about, and because a lot of these people are here for music, but in order to understand music videos, you have to know a little bit about photography and film. So
essentially with film, it's a very difficult chemical process. It's a tedious work. You have to get the chemicals just right in order to get the images just right. And if you messed up, it looks crappy. That's essentially it. Also, you cannot record audio on a strip of film. Because
What?
And so you have to record audio separate from film. So that was a little bit of a disadvantage because you had to take in the extra time to sync up the images with the sound, and you had to be very skilled essentially to be a video editor back in the day.
And so you're speaking just, when film was around, before you could...
This was film.
Yeah.
We're talking about film. And so, it required very skilled people to do it. Also, if you messed up on a take, you had to throw away the film strip and do it all over again.
So you would always rehearse it a lot beforehand just to make sure that you got the right shot so you didn't waste money and materials and all that.
Exactly. It's like, why do you think the actors back then were so well known? Because they were really good at doing it at the first take.
Right.
So that's another thing to consider with film. And so, it's also pretty expensive. Like Nick was saying, film is pretty expensive. But the outcome of film is just breathtaking when you do it right. And so that's why it's still kind of around today, actually. It's because people appreciate that authentic look of film. And the image and the quality of the image is just breathtaking.
Yeah, and then I guess that can kind of take us into our next section is we want to talk about, or have you, talk to us and explain, about the different eras of music videos and how that kind of came to be.
Yeah, and maybe we can still kind of compare and contrast and explain a little bit of the media technology as we go as well. So
okay, so I guess we'll take a break from media technology and dive into the music history, essentially.
Yep.
Alrighty. Well, good thing we talked about film because that's the first thing that comes up. So.
Good.
So, in the ancient times of the Greeks, you had to listen to music only by being present. Okay, I messed up. Take that out. Okay, essentially, back in the ancient times, the only way that you can listen to music is if you were present in front of a musician.
Yeah.
That was the only way you can listen to music.
No way to record.
Yeah. And
so if the musician was ugly, you're pretty much out of luck then.
Yeah, the musician also had to be pretty good. And so for thousands and thousands of years, humans have associated music with being in the presence of a person, I guess you can say. So there has to be a visual image with music, if that makes sense. Then along came the 1800s, Sir Isaac Newton.
Who's that?
I'm so bad at this. Okay, Edison. Edison created the phonograph. If you remember my brother's episode, in which, if you haven't listened to that, go back and watch it or listen to it, all right?
It's honestly a really great episode.
Okay, so like my brother talked about, Edison in the 1870s created the phonograph, in which it was the first time that you can record a person or music being played, and then as time went on, you can play that wax cylinder back and listen to that same music. So it was the first time that you can listen to music without being in the presence of a person or a band.
Which, if you go back and listen to Joe's episode, we talk all about those wax cylinders and how they were able to record music back during that time period.
Yeah.
Just a little insight, I guess.
Also around this time, there was something called the magic lantern. And for those that have seen the cartoon movie called Tarzan, it's that scene where you see that projector-looking thing and they show images on the tent.
Right, the little slides that they stick
Yeah.
in and the
And it's
light
like,
behind
I want to
it.
know. And
Exactly.
It's like, do.
Exactly.
Phil Collins, I mean...
He didn't exist back then, but yeah, that's essentially magic lanterns was just a light projector, and they can project images. And I'm about to show these guys actually the beautiful images that you can have with magic lanterns.
Yeah, and again, let me just explain before we go into this. So again, we're going to be including all of the links to these videos, these photos, and we're going to try and organize them in a way that's kind of chronological and is easy to understand with what we're talking about. So if you're in our podcast on our website, you can actually look at the description and follow the link to watch this video. We're going to name it Magic Lantern. Now, I think, you know, it's important that, you know, we're going to try and be as descriptive as possible about these videos and really explain what's going on, just in case, you know, you aren't able to watch them at this time. We still want this episode to be entertaining for you. And so we're going to do our best to be as descriptive as possible and still be informative.
So yeah, if you notice, like with the magic lanterns, just the quality of the image that you can portray on there. And they were just hand painted on glass plates. And for the longest time, it entertained people. But it was around the 1800s that they decided, you know what, we should play music with these magic lantern slides and to create a story with it. And so around this time in the 1800s, they did the first story slide projection called The Little Lost Child in 1894. And it featured an orchestra playing it in a big theater and a narrator explaining the story. And it was very entertaining. So this was kind of the first step to cinematography, or kind of the first step towards a music video, I guess you can say, was at this point. All right, now let's progress back into Edison. Let's go back to Edison, actually.
Well, and if it's okay, I'd just like to say really quick that,
Okay.
I mean, just kind of give my reaction, I guess. I thought that was really interesting. And the thing that I liked about it was the fact that they were taking these slides and showing them to audiences and it like telling a story. Like there was a narrator or there was an orchestra playing. Like, you know, I knew about magic lanterns and I knew that they, you know, you could show pictures through them, but I didn't know that you could, you know, I guess I didn't put two and two together about people actually playing music with it or telling a story with it. I thought it was more just for a slideshow presentation or something, not anything in depth.
Yeah, that was kind of a wow. It was actually invented, like the video said, in the 1600s, but it wasn't until the 1800s that they decided, you know, let's make a story out of these slides. You know, let's tell a story. Let's have drama in there with music. Make the audience engage with these characters.
Yeah,
It's
that
kind
is
of
so
like
cool.
laying the foundation for what will later become, you know, going to the cinema, you know, the movie theaters. And
Yeah,
things like
exactly.
that.
It's kind of the foundation for cinema, and cinema is the foundation for music videos, and we'll talk about that later. So, back to Edison. He and his buddy named William Dickinson tried to create the first video projection with audio, pre-recorded audio, because before then it had never been done before. And so what they did was they shot like 10-second clips of a person doing something and record at the same time on a phonograph. And they would try to sync up the sound on the phonograph with the projected images on the film. Now, it turns out that the frame rate of the film and the recording speed of the phonograph didn't actually match up too well. And that's just because of mechanical error. back
Makes
then.
sense. That'd be pretty hard to get right, I feel like, with the technology that they had at the time.
Yes, because back then you actually had to hand crank the film camera.
Yeah, so it's not just relying on technology to put it all together seamlessly, but you had to, do it all by hand. So
So if you weren't cranking at the right speed.
you were out of the job, it's like, you're fired, right?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. It was really experimental with the film back then. But, they had the guts to just try it, and just put it out there. And so they would take these short clip films and show it on a little box, and they would show the images in this little box, and they would have sound over here. And they were hoping that the person would be entertained. They were kind of thinking of it as like a circus festival sort of thing. They weren't thinking of it as like a cinema production, but more of like a circus means of entertainment. So here's a video of the only existing film that they tried. So, if you notice on the video, there's this violinist that's playing really close to this big horn, and that was for the purpose of recording onto the phonograph, because back then it wasn't very sensitive, and so the musician had to be really close in order to pick up sound. And for some reason, there's two guys dancing, but we don't talk about that.
Yeah, like my reaction to it, it's black and white. It's very grainy. It definitely looks a little off kilter in a way. And there's a huge horn. The violinist is like 2 feet away from it, if that. And he's playing into this horn to try and get that sound to, be captured and be of good quality. So yeah, I definitely recommend you check that one out. It's something you don't see every day.
Oh no, You got to see it to believe it. All right, now we're getting into the 1900s. So film technology is getting better, as well as sound technology. And so around this time in the early 1900s, they had something called silent films. The films like Charlie Chaplin or, just anything that's silent, because back then they couldn't figure out how to synchronize the sound, like we've talked about before. They couldn't figure out how to synchronize the sound with the images that are being portrayed. And so they just said, you know what, we can still make it work. It's got to be silent, but, we can still entertain people with these videos that we're creating. And but what they did have was bands and musicians play in the theater while the silent film was going on. And that's how people can listen to music during these silent films.
So almost like back to the Magic Lantern a little bit, where, you had orchestras and people playing while they were showing the slides. Just now the slides are a little better. It's actually a motion picture in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of tells you something about the power of music, It's like people are more entertained by a motion picture if there's sound to it, even if it's music. So...
Well, music does make everything better. What can I say?
It makes you move, too. So.
Yeah, so for little tents, they would have just a pianist, or for big theaters, they would have a full-on orchestra just play down. You've seen theaters like where the band's just down there, ground level.
Down in the orchestra pit and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. So it wasn't until the 1920s that they figured out how to synchronize music and sounds with the video. And... in the very early 20s, it was very small. It's like you had to be in a very small room because the sound wasn't amplified enough for a big audience to hear.
Right.
But what it involved was having the film camera be hooked up to the same motor as the recording device. That way, when the motor turns, the camera is running at the same speed as the sound was recording at the time.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
And so it wasn't until in the late 1920s that that Warner Brothers did the very first full feature-length film using synchronized sound. And the very first movie was The Jazz Singer in 1926. And from there on out, from 1926 to 1929, all these video companies in Hollywood decided to create sound films. Like the percentage of sound films was from 0 to 75%.
Basically overnight.
From 1926 to 1929, sound films rose up to 75%. So
all because of Warner Brothers.
Yeah, Warner Brothers took the gamble and decided to make a full feature-length sound film.
Well, and that's so clever.
The jackpot, yeah.
Yeah, and it is so clever that they essentially hooked it up to the same motor, so it was the same speed. You didn't have someone trying to crank along at the right speed.
Exactly.
That's super clever. So
yeah, and the recording device, instead of it being a wax cylinder, it's on a vinyl disc now. So you have better quality too. And the sound system they perfected so that they can play it in a big theater. So,
Well, and if you want to learn more about vinyls, again, go back and listen to our episode with Joe Cassler, and that can help fill you in on that side of things. So
yeah, exactly. Now, during this time in the 20s and the 30s, they would actually show very short films before the main feature, and they would call these soundies, and it would just be for the sole purpose of promoting a film company or promoting like a musician or an artist. And one of the most famous soundies was something called the St. Louis Blues, where it featured the singer Betsy Smith, who was considered the mother of the blues back in the time.
Okay. Well, and what that instantly reminds me of is, like you have openers at concerts and things, and then you have trailers before movies, and you know what I mean? So you can kind of see how that evolved.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I would consider this time the very first instance in which the seeds of the music video to be planted, because it's a relatively short film, and you had some actors in there sing. Just like you would a music video.
Music and film, like they're starting to grow together a little bit.
Yeah, but they were still considered more of movies than you would consider them music videos. Because they were more of promoting the film company than they were promoting the artist that was featured. The artist was kind of more of a guest singer, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
It's just a guest singer so that they could promote their movies and so that they would get more people interested and create revenue and all that stuff so that they can make other projects and continue on with their business and company.
Exactly. So here's the video of Betsy Smith restored to the best of its ability. So yeah, you saw in the video, it was about 15 minutes long, but it essentially was really like a mini film. It was 15 minutes long. It had like essentially a plot line for the first half, and then the second half, it was like one big musical with Betsy Smith as the guest artist. And you can kind of see how music videos in the future were a little bit inspired by that kind of style with musicals, if that makes sense, where one person sings and then a group of people joins in and then they do off their dance moves.
Jazz hands.
Yeah, jazz hands to entertain the folks watching. So it was really kind of the first seeds of the music video was right there.
Well, and yeah, I think you can definitely see that. Like in this case, I feel like they kind of told the story before the music came along, whereas I think music videos today try to tell the story while the music is going.
Although every now and then you do get a music video that has a small story, not quite that long, but they do sometimes have stories before the music video starts.
Right. Small scenes before or after, in the middle even. Yeah, if you watch the video, or if you didn't, I guess we can explain it a little bit. As a person who watched it for the first time, the first couple minutes I was a little confused because it seemed a little, just everyday life back then, and as someone who lives in the now, it wasn't as entertaining to me. But then throughout the video, you find out that this woman's lover is seeing another girl, and he's just kind of a scallywag, and she ends up kind of singing her heart out about it. It gets very raw and emotional, and you get to hear her sadness coming through, and
and she's definitely got quite the pipes too.
Oh yeah. I mean, I bet you if you had the modern music recording of this day, could you imagine?
I know, capturing that.
Yeah, it would be amazing. Her voice was so good, and at the very end, well, I guess in the middle, something else I noticed was how her lover pushes her down onto the floor. It was a very raw moment in that video, and I don't know if you would see. I mean, I guess you do see stuff like that in videos today, but it took me off guard for a video that's so old.
Well, especially how when the things that they would show, in film and eventually in theaters when that became more commonplace, it was very limited on what they would show. I mean, if you fast forward to the 60s with Elvis, he got banned just because he was shaking his hips. So to show, that little bit of almost like domestic violence, shoving her down, that's a little bit shocking that made its way through too. Yeah,
you'll be surprised what 20s videos actually showed back then. It'll catch you off guard.
Yeah.
That's what I found. But yeah, you can see how it kind of really started the music video idea, even though it wasn't technically a music video.
They're just slowly growing closer and closer together, it seems like.
Yeah. Now, kind of an interesting note, we're getting into the 30s, and guess what happens? Great Depression. Turns out that...
That's depressing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to get that.
It turns out that had Warner Brothers not gambled with the idea of producing a full feature-length sound film, it would have delayed syncing up video with audio for about 2 decades, experts would say.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So they taking that chance was big.
Yeah, so could you imagine what would happen if the process of syncing up music and video didn't happen until, like, what, the 40s?
Yeah. Like
Well,
what
we
would
probably
have.
would be, 20 years behind today, probably.
It'd be like going back to the 90s. That's crazy.
Yeah, so that was a really good gamble on their part. So pretty much from the 30s to the 50s, it was kind of pretty much the same. Not really much has changed. Of course, film has gone better and sound recording has gone better. So the only way that you could see a movie was if you went to a theater. That was it. From the 30s, well, from the 20s to the 30s and 40s, the only way you could see a movie was if you went to the theater. And so they would have great variety of entertainment. They had like sing-along videos where the audience can follow the bouncy ball. That's where that came from. They had videos like what we saw, like little mini videos. And then, of course, they had full-wide, full-length production videos that had high-quality film. One of them, one of the most astounding ones being The Wizard of Oz with its perfection of Technicolor and using color film. So also during this time, musicals were becoming a thing. And musicals, essentially, if you haven't, if you don't want to know what a music video is, well, I'm sorry.
Well, I don't know why you're listening to this episode then, but...
Basically, within the movie, there's segments where people sing and they dance. Turns out, in future music videos, we'll talk about this, but they were inspired by those musicals, actually. With the choreography, with the dancing. It was really entertaining if you do it right. So... And then we come to this very interesting machine not many people know about. I didn't even know about it until I found out. But it was something called a sounding machine. Imagine like a jukebox at like a bar. But instead of playing music, it played music videos. They didn't call it music videos, but it was essentially short clips of people singing.
And that's where the machine got its name. They called those little videos, called soundies.
Yeah, exactly. They were called soundies back then, like Nick was saying.
This is so cool. I've never even heard of this up until right now.
Well, I didn't know about them until yesterday when I looked up, all the different links.
Yeah. It turns out that sounding machines were not popular in the US. That's why we don't know about it. But they were very popular in places like Europe.
Okay.
And so Europe had a lot of sounding machines. And so I'm going to show this little video of this guy who collects things. And he just so happens to collect a sounding machine.
No, it's not Guardians of the Galaxy.
It was a sounding machine.
Yeah, and it reminds me so much of a jukebox, and I can just picture people, sitting in a pub or something and, deciding they wanted to listen to some music and watch a quick video, and, maybe a few people gathered around it, and, it's got a little back area where the film is being rolled. Like, it's so simple and yet so cool.
Yeah, very brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, this was before television was made. And so this was kind of really the first instance in which you can watch a video without having to go to the movie theater.
And have music with it.
Yeah, that too. And so, yeah, it was a very unique machine. And not many people know about it, strangely enough. And so that was something very cool. So now we're getting into the 40s. And if you know something about the 40s, after World War II, the U.S. acquired the audio tape.
From the Germans.
Exactly. And with audio tape, it had a better quality than, it was easier to record audio tracks on tape than it was with vinyl.
And multiple tracks. I think that was the main selling point of that. And it was also very high quality still, not as high as vinyl. Anyway, if you want to learn more about that, again, go back to Joe Cassler's episode. These are almost going to be kind of like brother episodes, I feel like, in a way.
Yeah, brother. All right. Now, here's something also interesting that came. Television.
Yeah.
What's television?
Television. You can watch videos at home whenever you want. You can watch stuff live without having to go there. High quality, black and white, high definition. Quote unquote high definition.
Not 4K yet?
Yeah. And just to give kind of a new concept that this is, like, if you've seen the movie Back to the Future, when Marty finally goes back and his grandpa hits him with the car instead of hitting his dad, and they bring him inside the house. His grandpa is trying to set up the TV so that they can watch it while they eat. Like us today, we're like, oh yeah, let's turn on, a movie, Netflix, whatever, while we eat. But doing that was like, whoa, what are you doing there? That's some pretty revolutionary stuff that you're doing there that they're showing you in that scene in Back to the Future. Because, having a TV in your home back then, you were pretty well off if you're able to have a TV.
Yeah.
Nick, thank you so much for bringing Back to the Future into this episode. I don't think there's a single episode where we haven't talked about it yet. So.
Well, I actually watched it last night. So.
Where do you think we learn all this history?
Back to the Future.
But yeah, interestingly enough, well, I guess it's no surprise, when televisions went up, people going to the movie theaters went down. It actually went down 50%.
Oh, that's a pretty hard...
That's a pretty hard drop.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what do movie companies want to do? To bring people back to the movie theaters. Well, they've decided to create new technology for the film, make it a lot better, have 240-degree screen. What do you call it? Like a screen... panorama
like
sort of view?
Yeah, viewing angle.
Yeah, viewing angle, where it was kind of like a panorama. They had that. They've changed the aspect ratio, which is basically the size of the box. It used to be just a square, but then it transformed to widescreen for the theater's sake.
Okay.
And also, you got surround sounds. Now, with the audio tapes, that's all possible now.
Right.
And so
it's
you
all
get
coming together.
And so now people can feel the movie as you're watching it. Actually, the very first movie that had surround sound was Disney's Fantasia.
Oh, really? And I love that one.
Yeah.
That one is so good.
If you can imagine that part where the demon comes up and you can imagine like the bass, hitting the people and this demonic demon.
Or the one with the dinosaurs,
Yeah.
they're all like dying and
exactly.
heat, and then the earthquakes and all that stuff.
Yeah, so because of television, movie theater film companies upped their game with the quality of their videos now. They wanted to be more entertaining than what you can see on television. So another thing that came along with television was videotape. Videotape, it's all coming together now.
Ooh. What, like Scotch tape?
No, videotape.
It's just so cool, like how you're explaining this, how it all meshes together slowly. I really like it. Like this,
It connects the dots.
Yeah. I'm learning so much tonight.
Now with videotape, actually, it wasn't just by accident. It was on purpose. The reason why they created videotape was so that they can figure out a problem that they were having with live TV. You see, back in the day with live TV, essentially you had a camera, it'll make electronic image, and it'll broadcast that to your TVs all over the country. However, the only way you can watch it was if you watched it right when the camera was rolling. So how are people in Hawaii gonna see stuff in New York,
Right.
How are people in Paris gonna watch American television?
It poses a problem.
It poses a problem. So the first step that they tried to do was, why don't we have a TV monitor, while the TV camera is rolling. So the solution that they tried to come up first was by having a film camera record a TV monitor while the broadcast was going on. What they found out was if you record all of the TV programs that were going on, you would use more film than Hollywood has ever used in the past few decades. So it's like, that's an expensive, it would take, I've read reports where it took $1.4 million just for a half-hour TV show.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, that is not something that's feasible.
And so we're like, okay.
Especially since $1 million was worth a lot more back then, too.
Oh, yeah. So they're like, so they were like, yeah, we need to find a different solution to this. What they thought was, wait, we have this audio tape that can record audio sounds. Why can't we do the same with visual images?
And they put them together. So
it definitely took trial and error. Let's just say that it's not as easy recording video on tape as it is with sound. Because with sound, it was like, a quarter inch of audio tape back then. For videotape, it was actually 2 inches wide.
Much bigger. Okay. So they had to figure out how to lengthen the audio tape to fit the videotape.
Exactly. So the mechanics of videotape is actually not that complicated to understand. Essentially, here's this videotape going along, and I'm showing them a picture so you can view it down below. Essentially, as the videotape goes along, the electronic signals from the TV camera will go into this drum head right here. And this head would spin at 40,000 rotations per minute. So as fast as a jet engine.
That is pretty fast.
And so as the tape went by, it would create these vertical magnetic strips, coating, I guess you can say. It's not really coating, but it's kind of like a pattern. Yeah, it's like a magnetic vertical pattern.
Maybe similar to like a barcode nowadays in a way.
Something like that. Yeah. But essentially, when the machine read back the magnetic track, it would broadcast the image back onto a monitor. And that's how you would record TV using tape. And it'll go along with that. The benefit of tape instead of film is that you can record audio at the same time as you would the image. So instead of filming the image with just the film and then also as a separate machine record the audio, now you can record the audio and the images at the same time using the same strip of tape.
Thank goodness for magnetic tape. That's all I have to say.
So now synchronizing the images with the sound is it's a piece of cake now. You just have to record it at the same time and make sure the mechanics work. And as technology went on into the 90s and to the 80s, the videotape thankfully got smaller. And that's where we get the home video tape, the VHS
camcorder,
stuff like that was from this simple technology. And so this is kind of a diagram of the later technologies, see how thinner, and they do diagonal instead of vertical to make more room, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
and again, we'll post this photo on Instagram and Facebook. We'll figure out where to post it, and we'll try and leave a link to it as well.
So now, here's the downfall of videotape, though. Compared to film, it was crap. I mean, if you look at a videotape, even in the 80s, and you compare that to a film in, like, say, the 50s had better quality than the 80s videotape. Yeah. So that ought to tell you something.
Right.
But it was a very effective means and a very cheap method as well for recording live TV. Now you can broadcast the recorded version all over the world, and you don't have to watch it live. There you go.
So there you go. You can watch it on your own time.
Yeah.
Now, around this time, with the music and television, the very first person that keyed the term music video was actually J.P., the Big Popper Richardson.
The Big Popper.
He was like a folk country singer, I think. I'm sorry, I don't know this guy.
Yeah, I've actually never even heard of him.
Yeah,
I'm curious to learn more.
Yeah, he was like one of the guys that died in that airplane crash with Buddy Holly.
Oh, really? Okay.
And, the day the music died. You can research him. I actually didn't do too much research on him, unfortunately. But he was the one that made the term music video. So as television grew and as cinema productions were becoming better, now you can get very interesting video productions now. You're getting more stunning images. You're getting people getting engaged with the characters on screen. It's more alive. The colors are real. What are you going to do now? Well, you're going to show your celebrities. That's what you're going to do.
Right.
So guess who came along? Elvis, the king of rock and roll. And funny enough, Elvis, he didn't actually like making the movies that he was in, strangely enough.
Huh. You would think he would be all for that. He seems like a very, he seemed like a very, I don't want to say egotistical, but a pretty outgoing guy.
Yeah. I mean, he enjoyed them enough, but he wasn't like, I'm going to be an actor. It's kind of more like the film companies want him to be in their movies, to promote their cinema productions, if that makes sense.
Right.
Well, yeah, because he was just such a huge star that reached across multiple demographic audiences.
Yeah. But some good news as far as music videos go, with Elvis's movies, it brought more ideas for music videos in the future, if that makes sense. So an example of that is Jailhouse Rock right here, which is one of the famous Elvis scenes. So very entertaining, I would say.
Yeah, it's almost like watching, like a Broadway production, but on a screen.
Yeah, exactly. They wanted to really they had Elvis there to really make the movies entertaining, to have his songs on there. It promoted Elvis to a certain extent, but it was mostly for the film companies.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Elvis had already made a name for himself.
Yeah.
So they're just benefiting from him.
Exactly. And let's see. Kind of a fun fact, though, while they were filming for that, Elvis actually broke a tooth, and the tooth went down his windpipe.
Oh, jeez.
And they had to go to the emergency room for
I
that.
didn't know that. I've seen that music video before, and hey, also, if you haven't, definitely go check it out. The link is below. So.
And but the funny thing is, technically it's one segment of a movie, but if you could crop it out, you could consider it a music video, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Elvis is a pretty well-known guy, and just to have that little segment of him doing all that dancing with a bunch of guys with one of his songs, you would consider that a music video.
It's,
Well, then, of course, it's
essentially
part of a
the same thing.
feature-length film, though.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's part of a full movie, like Nick was saying. So
Yeah.
technically, it wasn't a music video, but it definitely had the elements of a music video. Now, I wouldn't consider this the modern music video, though. Because, like I mentioned before, it was more of the film companies trying to get more people to go to their theaters and making more money. It wasn't a movie about Elvis. It wasn't a video about Elvis, because Elvis played as a different character, such and such character by Elvis, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but then that kind of rolls into, what's come next in the 60s with the Beatles with A Hard Day's Night.
And we're getting into that. So now we roll along into the 60s. Guess who comes along?
The Beatles.
The Beatles. That's right. The Beatles, I feel like everything before then, I would consider a pre-music video. Just from the first video to when Elvis did his movies, I consider that the pre-music video era. When the Beatles came along, I consider this era the birth of the music video. Because if you don't know the Beatles, well, they're one of them.
They're considered the greatest rock band of all time.
Yeah, which is...
I've never heard of them.
So yeah, the Beatles were definitely well famous before their movies. They actually made 3 movies, I feel. Is that right?
I think that's right. Maybe 4. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's like 3 or 4. But essentially, the Beatles made a lot of movies and a lot of mini movie clips for promoting their albums and such. But we'll get to that. Essentially, when the Beatles came along, their music really, I don't know, what do you call it?
Took the world by storm.
Yeah, that's it. Beatlemania, screaming girls, stuff like that. But it was really when they did their first movie, A Hard Day's Night, that the audience can really connect with the Beatles now. They see them on screen. It's, they can see their faces. You can see their...
Well, yeah, and the thing is, when you watch A Hard Day's Night, it's introducing the Beatles and all that stuff. And one thing that I just had to interject, because I'm a big Beatles fan. One thing that I love about when they filmed A Hard Day's Night, it shows the band. They're going around, running around through like a train station in London, and they have all these screaming fans, and most of them are young girls just like screaming and crying because it's the Beatles. All those girls are not really faking or acting. Those are legitimate, actual reactions that these lady fans had to the Beatles. It was all real. It was all authentic. That was not acting.
Yeah, take that in for a minute. But yeah, that it brings about a really good point about why I would consider the Beatles movies really the start of the music video, because it was a movie about them. Everything that you see in the movie is an exaggerated version of their life. It was meant to promote the Beatles. It was meant to promote their songs. It was meant to have the audience connect with the Beatles on a very
intimate level.
Yeah, close, personal.
Whereas with the Elvis movies, it was more like, film companies just wanted Elvis just because he's Elvis.
Right.
But Beatles, it was all about them. And that's really the key with music videos, I feel like. It has to be about the music artist. It can't just be about the film company or anybody else, but just them. And that's what I feel like kind of separates what you would consider a music video versus video that's just a short movie or a musical, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's musical. I feel like that's kind of the difference between the two, right? I mean, a musical is telling its own story for film purposes, or for the video production companies, as you're saying.
Yeah, but with the Beatles, the film companies wanted to promote them, if that makes sense. They wanted to help the Beatles to become bigger than where they were back then, if that makes sense.
Well, I feel like for the Beatles, it was important to get, like, the Beatles wanted to be, the members of the band wanted to be more close and personal with their fans. Like, that was something that they strived for, I feel like.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and watch this. Definitely watch it. It gives you a really nice... you'll see. Kind of an interesting thing about these Beatles movies, they actually created the songs before they knew what the movies were about. So that kind of gives you an idea of how talented the Beatles were. They had to come up with music that could fit into these movies before knowing what the movie was about. So...
Well, this just goes to show just what incredible musicians that the Beatles really were. I mean, to really understand the Beatles and how great they were, you need to understand, just how crazy they took the first Great Britain by storm and then the world after that. And then you follow, I mean, that's a whole other episode that I could talk about right there. Which
sure
I
we
will
will.
not, but not right now.
Point, yes.
Not right now, but the Beatles, they were just the first to do so many things when it comes with writing music.
Yeah.
Especially, when it comes to rock and roll.
And funny enough, they were, in my opinion, they were the ones that really revolutionized what music videos were about, which is to be a video about the artist, like I was mentioning before. And also, if you don't know, they became popular in the U.S. after being on TV at the Ed Sullivan Show. So there's another thing about TV there, why it was important for musical artists. So
Yeah, it really is cool to see how this all correlates.
yeah, it's like... comes together.
Yeah.
Come together.
And then, of course, with their second movie, Help, it was in color film, and they've actually added very distinct qualities about it that you see in modern music videos today. You see, like, cut-tos of the band mates doing something random, and then you would see them playing their instruments, and then you would see them doing something again, and then back to them playing their instruments. So you would see that a lot in modern music videos, where it goes back and forth, and that really started with the Beatles, I feel like. Also, great quality lenses made the image, high quality, of course. And yeah, Beatles, man, Beatles.
I know, it's crazy how much they started, and it's crazy how, like, nowadays they all of a sudden maybe aren't as important as they used to be. I mean, I think
that's because people don't take the time to appreciate them.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter if you like them or not. Without the Beatles, you would not have the music that you enjoy today.
Exactly, and everything about the music you enjoy today, you wouldn't have it. So it would be completely different, and maybe even video in some ways.
In music
and
videos too. Yeah.
Would be.
Nah, I mean, it was more than just writing music. It's everything that they do because they just experimented with everything.
Yeah, that's definitely true. They definitely experimented a lot, and I feel the same way with their film productions. Like, if you see their short promotional clips, like later into the 60s, in order to not go to two places at once, they would create these short promotional clips in which we still can view them today on YouTube, but things like Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane were just a result of them trying to promote their album or their concerts without them actually appearing at a town.
Oh, that's the whole concept of Sgt. Pepper's, which was the first ever concept album.
Yeah.
They wrote that album to go on tour for them.
Yeah. So.
And in doing that, they created concept albums. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy.
I kind of want to take a break here, and I want you guys, around this time, I want you to appreciate what it took to actually create a movie using film. It's actually a very tedious process, and this video that I'm going to show you, it explains a lot.
Yeah, and hopefully you're following along as we're watching these videos, and you get the chance to, click some of these links and go watch these, because they're so informative and just really cool.
So there you go.
Well, and that just goes to show why they need to be, the tape needs to be wound correctly as well.
Oh, yeah. If you don't know, if you haven't seen it yet, essentially the guy literally has two separate things, the film and the tape, and he has to synchronize it correctly. And that's why you see in movies that clipboard in which you see them go, take two, take one, clip.
Yeah, the little black
clapper.
Yeah, exactly.
The black and white clapper. That's why you see that, is so that the editor can synchronize the clap with the image of the clapper going down. And yeah, it was just a very tedious project and a very expensive project, and it required very skilled people to do editing back then. And so you got to take a moment to appreciate the old films back in the old days.
Well, and the people who edited them, I mean, as Nick was saying when we were watching it, the gentleman does it so quick and he's so good at it. You know, he just knows exactly where to cut.
He's fast, he's precise. You know, it's just like, wow, I think I would have to do that slow just to get it right, or I would mess up all the time. You can't do that stuff because one take, or you got to do it all over again.
Yeah, literally. The film is the only print that you have of the entire scene, so...
And that's why I'm just like, whoa, he's fast.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, so moving on. Like I mentioned before, the Beatles made several promotional clips for the sake of them not having to travel around everywhere. And we get these very funky music videos like Strawberry Fields Forever. If you haven't seen that, you got to go see it.
Strawberry Fields.
Yeah, they use reverse, they use inverse imaging, and it's very bizarre. But like we said, they were very experimental as a band, so... Also, kind of an interesting note, Bob Dylan is considered the first artist to use lyric music videos.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a lyric music video you think of today where you see lyrics on the screen. It was literally just Bob Dylan in a barn with like cardboard sheets with bits and pieces of the lyrics of his song, and he just does this da 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 da,
and moves the
clip
out of this.
Yeah, moves the paper to the next one, and there are more words and the next one, and it was pretty interesting. So,
if you had the right idea, I guess.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in the song, it's called Subterranean Homesick Blues. So you can look it up if you want to. But now we come to something, I guess, now we go into 1967. And something interesting happened in 1967. A TV show called The Monkees was formed.
Well, the interesting thing about the Monkees...
I have so many questions.
Okay.
Well, the interesting thing about the Monkees were the first band ever of their kind, where they were not necessarily just a bunch of people, musicians who got together and formed a band and they became big. They were put together, for a TV show, who were a band, kind of like the Jonas Brothers, how they had their TV show and then they became big musicians. They were the first ever of that kind of, type of band, like how kind of like Kiss, had to get us with their costumes and had a big show, based off of that. The Monkees were the first ever of this type of category of band.
So essentially, they were not a real band. They were essentially a band that was formed by a TV company.
I see. Okay.
They literally sent out advertisements throughout the U.S. saying, "We need 4 guys."
They can play really well.
Actually, not even that. They just needed 4 guys that look pretty.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay.
Because didn't the Monkees, did they not know how to play their instruments?
Only 2 knew how to play instruments.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It was Mike and Peter. They were the 2 guitarists / bassists. But the drummer, Mickey, and the singer, the pretty boy English dude named Davey, they didn't know how to play instruments. And so...
It didn't matter because they were just filming them. Pretending.
Mm-hmm,
right?
Exactly. They were just pretending to be a band. And this is something very interesting happened. It's like the Monkees became very popular, first season. Every kid in America knew the Monkees almost as much as the Beatles. In fact, one of the Monkee songs actually made it to the top songs of the year above the Beatles in 1967.
Which was quite the feat.
Yeah, I was going to say.
It was the song, I could be wrong, but it was the song that you hear in Shrek, I'm a Believer. That was the song that made it higher than the Beatles as far as the song of the year in 1967.
Definitely the most famous song by far.
Yeah, definitely. It's like people thought that the song came from, what was that band that played in Shrek?
I'm a believer.
Smash Mouth?
Yeah, Smash Mouth. People think that it came from Smash Mouth, but I'm like, no, it came from the Monkees. But... yeah, that ought to tell you something. It's like this TV studio was trying to recreate an American version of the Beatles, essentially. But the problem with that is people actually appreciate it when the musicians are actual musicians.
Right.
Well, that's where you get Motown and all that stuff later on in the future. So
Yeah, why do you think people hate it when you see like a singer going off track with the lip sync? Why do people hate
That I was just gonna bring that up. Like that's what it reminds me of. You know, like I think a year or two. It may have been some time ago now, but I think Mariah Carey recently got caught lip syncing to one of her songs live, and didn't go well.
That's a big no. You're going to lose a lot of popularity if you're caught lip syncing, and that was big back in the '90s too.
And in the 80s too, there were so many bands that ended up getting caught lip syncing and just died overnight, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it really tells you that you can't just make a quote unquote music video of just some band. It has to be authentic.
It has to be original.
Yeah, it has to be, the people expect, honesty, and they expect true talent, even with music videos. And with the Monkees, that actually caught up to them. And, critics were saying, oh, they're just a fake band. And because of that, and for other personal reasons within each band member, they just decided to, just give up, essentially, and call it quits.
I mean, I can see why they would try to kind of copy the Beatles, though, because the Beatles were so huge. Like, who wouldn't want a bite of that, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you watch an episode of the Monkees, I mean, they look like they could be the Beatles.
Yeah, I mean, you have the smart, guy, who's a Texan in this case. You have the pretty boy English dude, who's the singer.
They got the bowl cuts, shaggy hair and all that stuff. They're tall and lanky, and I mean, they're almost like a mirror image of the Beatles.
Yeah, you got the comedic one, the dumb one, the pretty boy one, the smart one.
Everything that fits, that makes a good TV show.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to give credit for the Monkees, at least for the songwriters. They did make good songs, but unfortunately, because of the fact that people don't like fake bands, it just died away almost overnight.
Well, yeah, and some of their music was written for them, if not all their music.
I mean, there were a few exceptions. Mike, the Texan, wrote a few of the songs.
Yeah, that's what I thought, but, a lot of their music was written for them.
Yeah, and that was kind of the thing that turned Mike off, was the fact that he couldn't play his own instruments, because he was actually a good guitarist, believe it or not. But for the sake of the TV show, he had to pretend to play the guitar.
That would be frustrating.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not even really a musician, and that would be so frustrating.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was one of the first to go, of course. But if you want to see an example of an episode, you can check it out. But for these guys, I'm just going to show the end. Yeah, so if you haven't watched the video, essentially you see the Monkees do essentially what the Beatles did in their movies. It was just like them playing, even though it looked pretty fake, and then them doing random stuff. Very colorful, very Americanized, had the same hairstyle. What were you guys' reactions?
Just watch a Beatles music video, and that's
see a more pure
version. A more authentic version. Exactly.
Yeah. Also, we forgot to mention that they were the TV show was sponsored by Kellogg's. So.
Isn't Tony the Tiger with Frosted Flakes?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm never gonna look at Tony the Tiger the same way.
I don't think Tony the Tiger was even invented back then.
Well, still, but just knowing that the same company that made Tony the Tiger just blatantly copied the Beatles.
Ryan's going off. He's getting a little belligerent.
I'm triggered. I think spit just flew out of my mouth. I'm angry.
But they're great.
They're great.
But their songs have stuck around for a long time, and they were featured in Shrek. So
yeah, I mean, I even grew up with some of their songs, like the main theme for their TV show. Yeah. My dad used to have that on his CD, so I'm familiar with that. And growing up with that, and like, hey, we're the Monkees.
Well, and I love I'm a Believer. I mean, it's so catchy. It's just really a good song.
And their most famous song is actually called Daydream Believer. So if you're interested, look up that song. So moving on, before I move on, just remember Mike Nesmith. Remember that name, Mike Nesmith. He's going to be very important.
I'm reminded of Toy Story right now. It's Mrs.
I was writing the urge to say, it's Mrs. Nesbitt.
Yeah, funny enough, they have the same last name. But yeah, he was the tall Texan smart guy. But he's very important. You'll see why. All right, we're moving on to the 70s, which I consider the Dark Ages.
Dark Ages.
Essentially, the 60s were like, yeah, we're making promotional clips, and then the 70s were like, okay, we're kind of simmering down. It's like, I don't know, I guess maybe it was because of the Monkees, I don't know, but for whatever reason, bands, just weren't making as many they were called promotional clips back then, but they're essentially music videos, but just on television at random. Basically these clips would be shown before something like a movie would go on, or like something like that, if that makes sense.
Almost like the trailers before a movie. I don't know, promoting other
essentially
things.
Yeah, they were essentially just little clips to promote their band, like saying, hey, we exist. But interestingly enough, in the 70s they started using more videotape than they did film, because it's easier to broadcast things from videotape than film, if you remember. So one of the biggest promotional clips to come out, though, was Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody.
They saved the day. Good old Queen.
Yeah.
And this was the late 70s, like 1977. So, but I don't know. If you haven't heard or seen Bohemian Rhapsody, I don't know.
Oh my gosh, it is so good.
Well, I mean, it's still overplayed today, in movies, TV shows, and dances, and people just play it in their car all the time too. Anyways, I mean, Queen is just they were such a big band.
Well, and it was such a creative song at the time. Like, it just stretched the boundaries of music, even further.
I mean, like, even if you watch that, what was it called? That movie that came out, like last year or 2 years ago about Queen?
Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yeah, that's what it's called. Yeah, it's based off the title is that song. And when you watch, they go over, when they're creating the song, and then it's like, and so like Brian May is like recording a part, and then Freddie Mercury is like, okay, now comes the operatic section, and Brian May's like, yeah, the operatic section. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it was a very bizarre song, that's for sure. And with that comes a very interesting music video that they decided to film entirely on videotape. Believe it or not, Bohemian Rhapsody was the first music video to be entirely filmed on videotape.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And this was simply just because they wanted to go cheap. They didn't want to make it a very expensive thing. And so the easiest way to do that is just to record it on videotape, which is much cheaper than film. And also you can record, like we said, the audio on the same videotape as well. So, two birds with one stone, right? So just for the sake of nostalgia, let's watch it.
Okay.
So yeah, very interesting video though. Because it was entirely shot on tape, you can notice that the quality is not as good as, like, say, the Beatles movies or the film of the past. And funny enough, they actually use cameras that you would use for football games, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's why it's got that different feel of like almost like a live feeling rather than when you go back to A Hard Day's Night. It looks more like you're watching a film, which it was.
Yeah.
But rather when watching the music video for Bohemian Rhapsody, it's like watching a game.
Yeah, that is true. And I think that's what they were going for. They actually chose to do it on stage, just to tell the audience, we're great live,
Yeah.
We're a great live band, and you should come see us. And so you can see some of those special effects there, like with the infinity spectrum and with the they had a very, if you see in that scene where it goes, he's just the poor boy with the split image, that was actually just the cover that they put on the lens to split the light.
Oh.
And for the infinity spectrum, all they did was they shot the camera at a monitor that was playing the same image, so it created that mirror effect.
Oh, wow. So it's like a video of a video in a way.
Yeah, so literally those were just basic special effects. But it's also interesting, I should mention a technology note here. It's harder to edit special effects on film than it is on videotape. So that'll come in pretty handy for future music videos, as we'll talk about. Now, do you guys remember Mike Nesmith?
It's Mrs. Nesbitt.
Guess what? After he quit the Monkees, he tried going into music production, but that didn't work. So he decided to go into TV production, believe it or not. And guess what? He said to one of the Warner Brother headmen of the time, you know what would be really great was if there was a TV show that played nothing but music videos all day.
MTV, here we come.
Now, before I go into MTV, I should note that there was something that was kind of like the little brother, I guess you can say, of MTV. It was called Top of the Pops. And it was a European TV show that had a similar idea where they showed music videos, but it wasn't as international or as successful as MTV was.
Right.
In fact, kind of funny story, my father actually went to Holland back in the late 70s, and he saw these European music artists on Top of the Pops, including Bohemian Rhapsody, you know. And then when he got back to the United States in the 80s with MTV, he saw those same European artists being featured on MTV. So it wasn't until MTV that international artists were being recognized. Interestingly enough, it's like my father knew the European artists before America knew them. So,
Wow. Well, you're in Europe, so.
but we'll kind of get to that later, why it makes more sense. Essentially, Mike Nesmith proposed that idea, and they said, you know, that's a great idea. So long story short, they decided to create MTV, and the reason was because, believe it or not, album sales were not doing so great in the 70s. Like, new artists were not coming out as much as they were in previous decades. Not only that, but in the 80s, the new generation had a shorter attention span, you know, with video games and better TV and stuff like that. They didn't have time to listen to the radio, you know. It wasn't their thing, I guess you could say. And so they decided it was a great idea because with music videos, it'll instantly catch their attention, this younger generation, and it'll help these new artists get fame quicker. It'll promote these new artists better, if that makes sense.
Well, obviously, this was a good idea because, I mean, just look at how many competitors MTV had at the time. You've got like VH1. There's others. That's the only one that I'm super familiar with. And then, of course, the one you spoke about.
The Tops.
Yeah. So, yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of competition. I hope I'm not. So, yeah, MTV was created on August 1st, 1981 at 12:01 a.m. They recorded the actual day that it came out first.
Well.
And so they started it with, ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
Hey, no better way to start.
Rock
And
roll.
the first music video featured on MTV was Video Killed the Radio Star.
I love that song.
Yeah, it's an amazing song.
A great way to start off this TV show. And so, believe it or not, MTV was not very popular at first. Not many people knew about it. And so they were trying to figure out ways how it can become more successful, I guess you can say. What they discovered was all of the bands that they featured were just white men playing rock and roll. That was it.
Well, that's a very small demographic.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there was a little bit of an outrage from the black community saying, whoa, where are our singers? That's hard to say. Where are the black singers, essentially? And so they decided, you know, we're going to show more variety with our music. And guess who came along?
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson.
Exactly. Michael Jackson came into the scene with Billie Jean's Not My Love. And boy, was it successful after that. And you know what else Michael Jackson did for MTV? Thriller, that's right. Thriller was the revolutionary MTV music video. I would consider it the most revolutionary music video that MTV has ever had. And the reason is because before that, all these artists didn't know how to make a music video. Believe it or not, there was no written instruction of what a music video should have. And so with some music videos, it just showed a guy just kicking a kick drum, for example, and the song playing in the background.
Which, I mean, it doesn't really tell much of a story, you know,
Nope.
like it maybe helps with like the live feeling like you're there in a way, but definitely needed some work.
Yeah, and then you get the genius of Michael Jackson and then add MTV into the mix where you have that whole, it's like 10, 15 minutes before he starts singing. Where he's at the movie theaters with this girl and all of a sudden what they see on the screen starts happening and Michael Jackson turns into the well roll.
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
Interestingly enough, doesn't it kind of remind you of the old Soundies?
Yeah,
Kinda, yeah.
very much so. And another thing it reminds me of is Elvis as well, because I feel like Elvis propelled video forward with his charisma, and then you got Michael Jackson, who was also a very entertaining guy. Lots of people like to come to his shows and watch him because of his dancing and everything else.
Exactly.
You know, it's like the perfect storm.
Yeah, you can see like little hints of the past videos, you know, like the dancing of Elvis, the style of the Soundies coming into Michael Jackson's Thriller. And boy, were people hyped out about Thriller.
Yeah, and also wasn't at the time the most expensive music video ever, created as well, right?
Probably one of the most viewed music videos of all time, though. I'd
Yeah.
venture to say.
Yeah, that's true. And it was kind of an interesting story. Michael Jackson saw a movie that the director made. His name was John Landy. Sorry if I pronounce it wrong, but John Landy made these comedic horror movies, actually. And Michael Jackson saw one of those movies and he was like, I'm going to call that guy. And so he calls the director, and the director was living in England at the time, so...
Wow.
And
It's
so
hard to track down.
I don't know how he tracked them down, but that's what he did. And so, but once they came to know each other, they were best buds. And you can definitely see that with Thriller, all the fun and excitement that they had in creating the video. And it really paid off. People really enjoyed Thriller for the song, for the dancing, for the choreography, with the lighting, with the imagery. It was filmed on film strip, but it was converted into tape. And so that's how they broadcasted it. So
Wow. So it was very high quality.
high quality considering it was for TV at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I guess we'll just watch a little bit of Thriller.
Yeah, and hopefully you're following along with the links. These are some pretty influential videos.
So yeah, what were you guys' reactions to the Michael Jackson Thriller?
The same as it is every time. Just
It's incredible.
it is. It's such a good video.
Oh yeah, and yeah, you can definitely see just the great cinematography and the choreography with the dancing. Brought on a lot of the aspects from previous musicals and Soundies. So yeah, people took it. And it was because of Michael Jackson's Thriller music video that other artists decided to up their game with their music videos. They decided, oh crap, we gotta make it more entertaining, guys. And so from then on out, it was kind of the competition of which music video is better, which one had better imagery, which one has better choreography, which is the best song. So there you go. And then it started the whole MTV revolution of all these bands trying to create a music video with their songs. And it was definitely during the MTV era that kind of the idea that a band had to create a music video with their song became kind of more accepted, if that makes sense. So, but that's not to say that all bands accepted MTV, actually. There were a few bands that actually hated the idea of music videos, believe it or not.
Well, it makes sense. It was relatively new. I mean, although it had been going on for a long time before that,
It didn't have the same popularity as it does today.
yeah. Well, and
Although I feel though to a degree, music videos are still kind of dying though.
Yeah, I mean, we can definitely talk about that later.
Yeah, I'm not saying we delve into it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. But it kind of created artists that fully accepted music videos and used music videos to their advantage. Michael Jackson, Madonna, those artists. They couldn't have gone far without music videos. And then there were the artists that were hesitant, but, later accepted music videos, like Bruce Springsteen. I have a list here. Yeah, so Bruce Springsteen, Metallica, Billy Joel, those guys.
I love his music videos, yeah.
And then there were artists that completely hated the idea of music videos, tried a few, but didn't accept it. Some of those being Tom Petty, actually. Tom Petty was one of those artists that didn't like music videos to begin with. The singer for Journey actually hated music videos, believe it or not.
oh, I didn't know that. They've got some very iconic music videos too.
Yeah, but the music video for, what's that song?
Journey or Separate Ways.
Yeah, Separate Ways.
Yeah.
For the music video with Separate Ways, how it was awkward and stuff like that. And you see the singer kind of reaching out his hand towards the camera and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was actually him being angry and trying to control control it.
Interesting.
And yeah, Rolling Stones were another band that didn't accept music videos too much.
Well, I feel like Rolling Stones just kind of did whatever wasn't mainstream. I don't know. Not that has
that
anything
was
to-
like opposite of the Beatles.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like the
And I'm not bashing on them, by the way. I love Rolling Stones. I just it's just funny how their personality was as a band.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. You also saw in the 80s, more women were being recognized as musical artists, actually. And that was simply because they looked appealing on screen.
well.
I, mean,
I guess you
that's
can't argue with that logic. I mean, it's but
But I mean,
not right, but not.
no,
I mean,
you can't argue with it either.
it was good that they were recognized. There were women artists that were fabulous, and were definitely off the charts. But you gotta admit that, with music videos, especially Madonna,
Yeah. It's just sad that they weren't appreciated for their vocal talents first, I guess.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's kind of sad there. It's interesting, though. Critics at the time during the 80s said, well, yeah, it's all great now, but wait until a few decades from now. People will forget these songs just because they were associated with these videos.
Yeah. Jokes on that.
Yeah, could not have been more wrong.
Oh, yeah. Think about all the popular oldie songs that people today listen to. Where do most of them come from?
Music videos.
Yeah.
The MTV era, the 80s. Think about that. So, kind of goes to show you the power of imagery and sound when mixed right. Alrighty. So, there were a few good special effects that I do want to mention. I'll just mention one. Everybody knows this song, I hope. The Aha Take On Me.
Oh,
Yes.
that was such a revolutionary music video. I mean,
yeah.
It was the first of its kind.
Yeah, I want to mention that because the way that they did the drawing effects was they shot it on film, and then they had artists go and sketch each frame by frame, and draw each person like a sketch, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The artist drew the scene.
Yeah, the artist literally drew each film scene.
Each film slide. Film.
No.
Or
Literally, the artist drew each film
Frame.
frame.
frame. Yes. Okay. That's.
It's like, what are you looking for? It's like, oh, wait,
Frame.
it's probably easier than I'm thinking.
Okay, so moving on. We get into the 80s. Videotape is becoming better. Film, of course, is always getting better. The sound is getting better. Music videos are getting a lot better. And so it was really MTV's golden age of music videos. And boy, were people, hyped up about music videos. Watch it on MTV. You have the option of watching any music video that's on screen because it's 24/7, All right, now we get into the 90s. Now, in the 90s, not too much has changed. I would say the thing that changed the most in the 90s was the music style.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. Compared to the 80s, 90s is a whole different beast.
Yeah. And I mean, the concept of music videos hadn't changed in the 90s, but the way that the songs were at the time definitely affected the imagery of the music videos in the 90s, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like the way that the song sounded affected the imagery of the music video.
Well, yeah, like 90s was kind of the rise of grunge, and grunge was such a raw, because the 80s was just so fine-tuned.
Yeah.
Everything about music. And then, as the 90s came around, it became more popular to have a more raw, emotional song,
Yeah.
I guess, and style
Well,
of
I
music.
feel like during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, rock was king. It was the top genre. And then all of a sudden the 90s come, and then all of a sudden it's like a paradigm shift happens, and all of a sudden rock is not on top anymore.
Yeah.
Hip hop and pop and boy bands and things like that.
New metal, alternative. Well, new metal was more in the 2000s. Well, that could be debated, I'm sure.
Yeah, but basically rock is not on top anymore, and you have all these pop radio artists that are coming in, they're topping the charts, and all of a sudden you have Nirvana, this weird anomaly in the middle of all this pop, easier listening to, and then but you got the grunge that just spoke to the people of rebellion, I guess you could say, and it took the world by storm.
Oh, yeah. And a very good example, like you mentioned, was I would say that the most well-known 90s music video would have to be Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh yeah, well that's because it's the anthem of that generation.
Oh, yeah.
Very iconic.
Very iconic. Yeah, so Nirvana. The imagery, essentially, the band was in a high school gym, and people are just going crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody, it's so 90s. Everybody's dressed in 90s clothes. You know, the colors, the way.
Well, even just Kurt Cobain's shirt, just screams, the iconicness of the way everybody dressed from the 90s.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. The last few scenes where you see everybody going crazy with the drum set and Kurt Cobain smashing his guitar, that was not fake at all.
Yeah. Kurt Cobain was known for destroying, like I told you with that. So I told them a story while it was playing that while they were first getting big, Dave Grohl needed a new drum set and it was just falling apart, but I don't know if it's a band manager or somebody said, no, we're not going to buy you a new drum set. You just got to stick with what you got. So Dave Grohl goes to Kurt Cobain and says, hey, man, our next show, I need you just to trash my drum set so it'll get me a new one. And so Dave Grohl just kicks it, hits it with his guitar, throws it off stage. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll get you a new drum set.
They didn't have a choice at that point.
No choice. But it was kind of funny. Basically, on the day of the shooting, Kurt Cobain, as well as all those teenager kids, thought that this would only take like an hour or two. It ended up being an entire day.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And so, literally, when you see Kurt Cobain screaming at the camera, that's legit Kurt Cobain screaming at the camera because he was really angry.
He's done. He was done.
Yeah, he was done. He just didn't want to do it anymore. And at the end, all the kids were restless and they were like, can we just trash the place? And the director was like, fine, go ahead.
Like, at this point, I don't even care.
And the funny thing is, he only had one last roll of film, but all those scenes where you see Kurt Cobain smashing his guitar, all the kids carrying off the drum sets, all the throwing people everywhere, that was on the last roll of film.
Yeah, and that makes up a big chunk of the video.
And it was authentic and it felt real because it was real. So
yeah.
And kind of to go along with it, it's like you can definitely, the song was more grungy, more hard, and you can see that with the imagery. It was so yellow, smoky. The light was blinding Kurt Cobain's face, making it mysterious.
Well, and it intentionally, it was made to look raw intentionally.
Yeah,
and
that's what
unfiltered.
Grunge is. It's very raw.
Yeah, so you can see how songs are starting to influence the way the music videos looked. So that's a very good example of that. Now, I'll briefly get into technology stuff again.
All right.
So we talked about the film, how it's just a bunch of pictures being taken. And then we talked about the videotape, which is just a magnetic record of the image. Now we're getting into digital. Digital really started becoming a thing in the 80s and into the 90s. It was very experimental during that time, but that's when it really started, was the 80s and the 90s. The technology of it, out of all of the media technology, this one is the most complicated to explain. So I'll give a very simplified version of it. So in all digital cameras, there's something called a digital sensor. This digital sensor has something called silicon.
You lost me.
Which is an element. It's a semiconductor, which means it likes electricity, but not a whole lot. And if you mix in other elements in there, it becomes either more positive or more negative. All right. So let me show you a picture here. So we have a more negative silicon up here and a more positive silicon down here. They're sandwiched together.
So the one that says NSI and then the P/NSI.
Yeah. So this is more negative and this is more positive. Turns out if you put those together, all the electrons on the more negative side are saying, oh, there's room over here. Let's go down here. All right. So they all go down to the more positive silicon. But turns out that they get trapped there. Now, if you put in an electric current into this sandwich, stuff this full of electrons, it gets too full. It can't, take any more electrons. There's got to be a way for those electrons to escape. And a way it escapes is light. So when light hits this sandwich, those electrons get free and they rise to the surface. Now the circuitry captures those electrons, transfers it to a computer inside the camera, reads it as code and says, okay, there are more electrons here, that means it's brighter. There are less electrons here, that means it's less bright. So now you have a black and white image where, more light means it's white, less light means it's dark.
Yeah, so basically just the same thing that film does.
Kind of.
In that, it captures light. It's just a computer processing it and deciding how it's supposed to look.
And I'm very sorry if you got confused. That's the best that I can explain it. But how do you get color? Because just the sandwich silicons just make black and white. Well, it turns out, I forgot to mention that each sandwich is a pixel. And there's thousands and thousands of these sandwiches. Imagine that.
Yummy.
You've got my attention.
Okay. So they assign each little pixel, each little sandwich, a filter that can only accept red light, green light, or blue light.
The primary colors that create all lights. Or
Exactly. If you combine those light colors together, you make white, essentially.
Yeah.
And so the same circuitry captures the color of the filter, what goes through the filter. Sometimes it's less red, sometimes it's less green, or more green, blue, green. You get it. And then it transfers it into code, and it says, okay, there's less red here, but more red here, more green here, less blue here, etc. But once you compile it all together and look at it far away, it looks like it looks like a picture, essentially.
Yeah.
You can't really tell that there are pixels with different red, blue, and green colors. And
the more pixels you can shove in there, the more detail.
Exactly. So the bigger the sensor size, the more pixels and the more high quality your image is going to be. That's why DSLR cameras and cinematic cameras are so expensive. It's just because the sensor is yay big for cinematic cameras.
He's making a circle with his fingers that's like the size of an apple.
Whereas
or a very small sandwich.
Whereas with like cameras on your phone, they're like the size of your fingernail.
Your fingernail, your pinky fingernail, maybe. Or...
Yeah, essentially. So that's a brief, oversimplified gist of digital technology.
If you got more questions, Google it.
Well, of course, processing power comes into play too, right? Because like you can have all of the pixels or sandwiches in the world, but if it can't process it right,
that's true.
It's kind of worthless.
Exactly, and that was the struggle in the early 80s and 90s was the computers, they couldn't handle it. It had tons of noise. It didn't look great. It looked crappy. It wasn't as good as videotape, essentially. But in the 2000s, that's going to change. And so in the 2000s, it becomes more perfected, and the images actually can compete with film now.
And that's where we get into
the modern era of music videos. Turns out in 2005, MTV had a good run and says, okay, we're through. We're done. But yeah, I guess before that, let me just show you a very NSYNC shows a very nostalgic 2000s type of music video. And so the NSYNC videos were really the apex of what MTV could provide as music videos. And after that, it really decreased. So yeah, we just watched NSYNC's Bye Bye Bye, made in 2000.
20 years ago.
It reeks of the 2000s, as John was just saying.
The reeks of the 2000s, the clothing, the special effects. But it did show the where videotape, where it's progressed, since the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's definitely higher quality, and about this time, digital was being perfected. So MTV decided to call it quits in 2005. Bye, bye, bye. And so...
I see what he did there.
But guess what also came in 2005? YouTube.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
YouTube was created the same year MTV said bye, bye, bye. Well, I guess you can take it from here, really. You can use your imagination.
Yeah.
But we'll still talk about it, all right? So essentially, in the 2005, YouTube was created, and now digital has been perfected to the point where it's even better than film. Isn't that mind-blowing? For over 100 years, film has been the leading method of creating high-quality images. Here comes digital, and it basically has taken over film. And I think the part of the reason is because it takes the best of both worlds with film and with videotape. When you think about it, you can take very high-quality images, but also record audio at the same time.
And the editing capability, is something else.
Well, it's out of this world.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, especially now, but you know, it was very impressive back then too. And you didn't have to cut tape or do any crazy. You just had to click a few buttons on the computer.
Exactly. Since digital is all computer based now with code, it's easier more than ever to film because all you do is just manipulate code. So there you go. And one of the highlights of the late 2000s when digital became a method for recording videos was 30 Seconds to Mars's music video called From Yesterday.
Yeah.
Not yesterday.
That's a great one. I'm excited to watch this one.
So we'll watch it. So 30 Seconds to Mars, I have no words. It's just too beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very pretty music video. Like,
Very pretty.
yeah.
It's
I
more than
love the music too.
it's more than very pretty.
What more can you say? I don't know.
But it shows just how far digital had gotten in just a few, short years when you think about it. And so, yeah, it was like, I don't know, would you say like the 2000s was like the real hard rock era? What do you guys think?
Well, at least for me in the early 2000s, I really felt like rock came out back a little bit with the alternative emo punk scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, alternative, new metal, but there was a lot of pop in the 2000s.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of pop too.
So like, it really depends on what you liked, because there were some huge pop artists, for better or for worse, in that time period. So.
But you can see that the music videos still had that kind of formula where it was story based and the song just kind of went along with the story, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's not until we get into the 2000 teens that kind of starts to change, actually. With the 2000 teens, guess what type of music came out?
Skrillex.
Dubstep or electronic EDM.
Yeah, dubstep, EDM, all that kind of music. So,
not that it hadn't been around prior to that point, but
that's when it just really became big.
It had a resurgence.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of interesting with the music videos, especially these most recent years. It kind of seems like more and more the song is the leading factor for how the music video is going to be. Instead of the video itself entertaining, while listening to music, it's more like the video has to go along with what the music sounds like. Because nowadays, music is more of creating these weird sounds, and this funky beat. And so they try to incorporate that style into the music video image, if that makes sense. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can definitely see that in a lot of music videos from that time period and now. It's become more about the song itself and
giving, creating that message from whatever the message that the musicians are trying to convey within that song.
Yeah. And so I have two videos here. The first one is Skrillex. Here's kind of like an example of the early 2000 teens, and I'll show later 2000 teens. But you get the gist of that one, moving along with time. And then the second video that I have is in 2015. It's with an artist named Getter. I haven't heard of him until McKay brought him up to me. He's like an EDM artist.
He's got all kinds of different artists.
if you don't know who McKay is, McKay Wood is the owner of Iron Grave Stuff. He's been on this show
I'm
before.
sure they know McKay. I mean, he's been on the show.
Yeah.
We advertise his business all the time.
Right. But I mean, I'm just throwing it out there. If you don't listen to our
McKay is
advertisements.
famous here.
Yeah, come on, guys. All right. But anyway, this just, I don't know. You just have to see it. Well, if you've seen it, I mean, there are no words.
Yeah, it is quite the trip.
Especially the burger trip.
I mean, literally, there were no words except get your head knocking. It's so...
Lots of animation and special effects, though.
That was interesting for sure. Especially all that weird like slime stuff that'd be like on their face, and then it's on their hands, and then it's on their phones.
And
then
you didn't say burgers.
I already said burgers before this, Ryan.
Whoa, but I just thought I expected you to say burgers again.
Nick is hungry. He wants burgers. Nom, 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 nom. But yeah, I mean, literally, throughout the entire song, those were the only words. So what drives the music video?
Burgers.
Okay, control your hunger for just a second.
Well, why would they put in so many burgers in there?
I don't know.
It kept you watching.
It did. It really did.
SpongeBob.
Do it for the views.
Krabby Patties. But yeah, it kind of makes you wonder though, is it really the music itself that's entertaining or is it the visuals?
Yeah.
I would say with that one, it's, for me personally, it's mostly the visuals, but I would also say it's a mixture of the music too as well.
Yeah.
Because if it was just the images and you took out all that music, I don't think people would love it as much.
Yeah.
So I would say it's a combination of the two when it comes to that music video.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's like one has a relationship with the other. Whatever the music sounds, the visuals have to really make it look like the sound. It's kind of interesting. But that seems to be the way that music videos nowadays are going. It's more the visuals rely on what the music sounds. So, and so that brings us to today. So that is a history of music videos. Do you guys have any questions? Anything you want to ask me?
Lots of questions.
Okay.
But first, just for our listeners, let's go back. If we could like summarize the timeline, you know, like I feel like we did it. You did it pretty well by saying, you know, there was the pre-music video era. Wait, well, I'll let you take this away. Yeah.
Okay. I would say that for the history of music videos, there are 4 eras. There is the pre-music video era, which goes from the ancient days all the way up to the 1950s. This was just literally the seeds of music videos being planted into the ground. I would say the next era of music videos is something called the birth of music videos, which it takes place in the 1960s to the 1970s. This was when, of course, the Beatles came in, they revolutionized the purpose of music videos. Promotional clips were a thing. They were shown on TV, and it really was the start of the music videos. And it was in the 80s when MTV came out, all the way up to the 90s, that I would call the rise of the music videos. Essentially, music videos are becoming more popular during this era. People expect a music video every time an artist releases a song, and the quality of the music videos become better every year. And so it was really the rise of the music videos. And then I consider the 2000s to our present day to be the modern music video era, where MTV died, YouTube gained control, and now everybody anywhere in the world can literally post a video on YouTube and everybody can see it whenever they want. And so
yeah, and I mean, taking it from there, I don't know. I feel like we've covered the meat and the potatoes. We've covered, you know, kind of your background and your backstory. But, you know, because you know so much about all of this, how did you become interested in it? You know, how has it affected you? How do you feel it adds to music or music adds to video?
Okay.
Sorry,
No.
Yeah.
You're good. I guess I'll start out with why has this become an interest of mine? Well, I'll give you a little secret. If you can do a music video, you can pretty much do a movie. Basically, a music video is just a short version of a movie.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, they usually have kind of a chronological story. I mean, the good music videos, right?
Yeah. Not to say that once you master music videos, you'll go and make the 12 Academy Award winning Emmys and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
The Russo brothers over.
No. Yeah. But music videos, what I'm trying to say is if you, a good way to start doing video production is to really do music videos, because it requires you to think deeply about how the music interacts with the visuals. And it really challenges you to be creative and to try to fit a story within 5 minutes, or even an abstract story within 5 minutes. And that actually is harder than it sounds, believe it or not. So.
Well, and I think it's kind of a two-way street as far as music. I mean, one of the biggest artists today in the alternative genre, for example, is the 1975. And I feel like they are very, I mean, no one is truly similar to the Beatles, but they're similar to the Beatles in that they're very creative. And when they make their music, they think about how they can broadcast it, whether it's through a music video or a live show, or, you know, recording it on video is taken into consideration. And you can tell that when you listen to their music with a lot of their songs. So I think, you know, one can bleed into the other and make the other one stronger, as long as it's done correctly and in a creative way.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a whole variety of music video styles. You can have it be mostly story oriented, or you can have it mostly music oriented with just visuals being spontaneous, you know. Yeah. There's just a wide variety of how you can do music videos. And yeah, it's a really good starting point if you want to do video production. So.
Yeah, and one can complement the other. Yeah. That's why we wanted to talk about this today. And you know, John was, well, thank you so much for being here and for educating us. And, you know, like, this has been really fun, and I've learned so much tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. And before we end this whole thing tonight, you know, we have our tradition of having our guests bring up a pair of lyrics from a song that they really like. And we'll go ahead and we'll get into that, and we'll let John share his lyrics that he would like to share with us.
Yeah. But first, you know, maybe tell us, like, I've just got so many more questions. Like, how have music videos affected the world, in your opinion? What is there a particular music video that changed your life?
I can answer both of those questions. My personal feeling about music videos is that music would not be where it is today without music videos, to be quite frank. Without when you think about it, it was really in the early ages of the 50s and the 60s, it was the imagery and the movie making that really got people's attention about celebrities and about bands. And that's what really drove them forward, like with the Beatles. Without the movies, people wouldn't have really connected with the Beatles as closely, I feel like. I feel like with music videos, like we talked about with MTV, if music videos hadn't been invented, if music videos hadn't been broadcasted like MTV did it, there wouldn't have been so many artists that have come forward. There would be so many artists that we would not have known had it been without music videos, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And I feel like with music videos, you know, going back to the ancient days, like I talked about, people have always associated music with seeing a person performing the music or playing the music or singing it. And I don't think that our minds have really changed that much. I think we've always expected that we would have some sort of visual whenever music was being played. And I think music videos have done done that in a very unique way. Instead of having to be there live and just seeing one person or just a few people play music, you can see a wide, you can get so creative with storytelling within the images, and you can connect that with the song, and it makes the song more powerful if you do it right. And you can really remember the visuals of a music video, the music videos that really click with you. I know that I've remembered music videos, you know, back when I was a kid, because it's always stuck in my mind, the visuals and the combination with the music. And
yeah, if I could add something to that, there's one that sticks out to me very vividly. Like, I never really knew all the song, just this one part, because there was this song, I can't remember if this is still the 90s or early 2000s when I had this memory, but I remember my dad bringing up on his computer, showing me all his siblings of this alien singing "I Will Survive." I'm sure everybody has seen that.
Yes, yes.
You know, like, I will forever, you know the beginning of that song until the alien, you know, gets crushed by the disco ball because of that video. The rest of the song, I could not sing along with at all to save my life. But I know from the beginning to that point, the lyrics to that song verbatim, and I could sing it all day, every day, because just, you know, the visual of the song. I mean, it wasn't that great of CGI, computer graphics, or whatever you want to call it, but because, you know, just the shock of the disco ball falling on the alien, it was so comical and so funny. It's forever ingrained in my mind. And I mean, and while it is a good song, I don't think that song would ever stuck with me had it not been for the alien getting crushed by the disco ball after saying she will survive.
I mean, think about popular music videos, even of today, of songs that were like 60s, 50s, 70s. Think of Bohemian Rhapsody. What do people first think of when they hear, you know, the title of the song, Bohemian Rhapsody? Well, I think they would first think of the song and then immediately think of that weird music video that they did with it.
Yeah.
Or think about Nirvana. I think it's almost impossible to think of Smells Like Teen Spirit without thinking about that music video, if you know what I mean.
Right.
Oh yeah, because it's just so iconic.
Yeah.
Well, and you brought up a good point where like it's ingrained in our history, in our culture, in how our brains work. You know, like I don't know if you guys know anything about like peg mnemonics and things like that, how your brain kind of connects visuals or to, you know,
Yeah.
we recognize patterns as humans.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, video with music and how it is, how we've used it throughohout history. That's why we're still using it today.
Yeah, this is kind of getting a little bit deeper, but I feel like another reason why people like music videos is because it satisfies two things that create thought and emotion. I feel like, you know, when you listen to a song and just those chords really hit you, you know, think of a song that really hits with you. You can't really explain why you feel that way, do you? It's kind of something deep and emotional. It's kind of like some call it the soul or the heart. I don't know where you would call it.
Yeah.
But think about music videos, just the image part of the music videos themselves. It's all mental. You can see the person. You can see people sing. You can see them doing random crap. Mm-hmm. You know, you can see a story being laid out. That fulfills the mind part of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if the mind and an inexplainable emotion kind of go together, you know, in a very beautiful way, then it creates something even greater than if one was just by itself. So.
Well, and you know, I think you've kind of created that tonight a little bit with this episode. I mean, you know, you've shared a lot of passion about your talents, and we're going to be including visuals for people to...
Yeah, which is a first for us. And
it's going to be different, and hopefully our listeners, you know, will enjoy this. And sorry if any of it's kind of jarring or out there, but I think when all of this is said and done, this is going to be an episode that we'll all remember.
Yeah, I hope so. So, as far as music video that really stood out to me, I distinctly remember when I was around, 13, 14, sometime that age. It was actually a music video that was homemade, believe it or not. It was a music video that a person created just on his own or her own and uploaded it on YouTube. And it was the song of Breaking Benjamin, Dear Agony, with that movie that Will Smith played, like the 7 Seconds, if you remember that. It's like the story is he got into a car wreck with his wife, I believe, and it killed her wife and 7 passengers of this bus that he crashed into.
Oh, that movie. Oh my...
I forgot what
Is that movie really that old?
I don't remember. It came out in 2009, I believe.
Really? I didn't realize that movie was that old.
But I can't remember the title to save my life.
It isn't like iRobot, is it?
No, it's not iRobot.
I just know there's a car crash in that one.
But essentially, it was the music of Breaking Benjamin's Dear Agony with particular scenes in that movie. And the way that the person captured the emotions, the raw feelings of what Will Smith was feeling right after he crashed the car and the feelings that he felt with his wife made the song really more meaningful, I guess you can say. It's like you can feel the emotion more in the song because of the visuals that you were seeing. It's like you're connecting the story with the story that Benjamin Burley was trying to tell, a certain perspective. I don't know if that makes sense, but...
Oh, it makes perfect sense.
No, yeah.
But it's like when I saw that video, it just changed the way that I saw video production. If you remember at the time, I was really into looking and observing Joe doing his videos, you know, and it was kind of a moment for me in which I realized, you know, if I can make a video like that, that would just be amazing.
Yeah.
And I guess the second most music video that really stood out to me was Linkin Park's In the End. And it was another amateur video editor, but he incorporated Star Wars into it, actually. Believe it or not.
How does Star Wars come into play in that?
He portrayed it as it was the story of Darth Vader / Anakin Skywalker.
In the end?
Yeah, in the end.
I never really watched that music video.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
It wasn't. It's the Linkin Park music video of that song is completely different, but it was an amateur music video.
It's
okay.
an AMV, an animated music video.
It's an amateur music video.
No, is that someone who made their own music
Yeah.
video
Yeah.
in relation to the song.
Yeah, those were very popular when YouTube first started. Yeah, I remember that. Those, yeah.
But it was just the way of the song and seeing Anakin Skywalker / Darth Vader's life. It's like, yes, this is a good way to portray the story that the song is trying to tell.
Yeah.
With this particular story that you're seeing. So,
Yeah.
so if you can't tell already, I love music videos that have a story behind it. I feel like any good video needs to tell a story. It can't just be random, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's just me. Because every person that has ever lived on this earth has had a story. And it's really the stories that have connected cultures together. And music videos have done that wonderfully. And so...
And then I think maybe this will flow well. What type of media or music do you prefer? I know we touched on music a little bit at the first, but you know, what do you prefer? And maybe we can lead that into your lyrics and closing if you want.
Sure, unless if you have more questions. So remind me again the question.
Oh, yeah. So what type of media, and I know you've sort of answered this already. You like music videos or videos that tell a story. You know, you talked about the music, you like it the first, but I don't know, maybe just more in depth. You know, what do you like in music videos specifically, or even just, you know, do you prefer film? Do you prefer digital? You know, you could get into that a little bit even.
To me, the right way to do a music video is you have to make the audience realize something that they haven't thought of before. And you can do that in however you want. I prefer the story method. For me, right now, I'm actually working on Blix 10's latest music video called Raining Stars. And it's actually the first music video that I've done that I've actually had to direct people. And it's very difficult to have people do what you imagine them to do. But frankly, that's kind of the beauty of it. It's like you're trying to tell a story through other people by having them act out. But accidents come along the way and things get filmed without you noticing or, you know, without you realizing it. And when you put it all together, the story, there's no words to describe, you know, the perfect story or the perfect music video, in my opinion. Like I said, it's all in the emotions. The songs really get to you in the emotions. And the brain helps out with the mental aspect of the story. And when you combine that together, like I said, there's just no words to describe the epiphanies that you might have or the emotions that you might have. Frankly, it's impossible. It's impossible to make a video without music. I have full respect for those that have the talent to make music. I can't do that. I can do the video aspect and I can try to create that relationship between video and music, but I cannot create music. And it just amazes me of people who can create music because they have a talent to evoke those feelings, you know, and you've seen it throughout history. People cannot watch a silent film without music. People cannot watch a music video without the sound entertaining the viewer.
Yeah, the senses, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Or the visuals, yeah.
And so for me, that's why I love music, is because it evokes those feelings that really, you know, you can't describe. And I try my best to create a video that hopefully creates that relationship between music and imagery. And
And I would definitely say that you do that pretty well, John. I mean, as one of the subjects of many of your music videos, you created a music video for one of the songs I wrote personally.
Yeah.
And I love it, and I feel like it captures the vision and idea that I had for that song, because that song has more than one meaning to me personally. It has many meanings, and I don't think there could be a better video made for that particular song. And also, when it came to John. Also, when I proposed to my fiance, he helped me create the video for that. I played a song for her, and John filmed all of that and put it all together, and it made it a really personal and emotional production out of it that me and my fiance will treasure for the rest of our lives. John has this amazing way of just taking something, he's got this idea, he's got this vision, and then he amplifies it tenfold. I mean, John, you have a real gift, you have a real talent.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, I tried to, I can't just do the visuals by itself. If it's just a silent visual movie, I can't do it. It has to have music, because it's only by that relationship that you can make something greater. And so with the Raining Stars music video, I'm trying to create a story that has a deep relationship with what the song is trying to say. And trying to create the visuals for that has been a pretty difficult challenge, but it's definitely a challenge that I enjoy doing. And so...
Well, and as someone who's seen your work and who has talked with you outside of just this podcast about videos and music and film, I mean, I've definitely seen your passion. And I mean, you came so prepared for this episode tonight. Anyway.
Yeah.
You have the passion and you have the talent. So.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And so I think now would be a good segue to, we'll let John go ahead and share those lyrics that he came prepared with, and we'll let you take it away.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share before we close out?
Not really. I'll just go ahead and share the lyrics with you.
iEngraveStuff.com is a local engraving service based in Linden, Utah. If you want an amazing engraving done on one of your personal belongings, get in touch with one of their specialists today. You might meet McKay, who is one of the main brains of the operation. He's also one of our close friends and the drummer of Nick's band Blix 10. Follow their Instagram page to stay in touch with the latest news for iEngraveStuff. And be sure to type in TP10 in all caps in the promo code box when you're shopping online at their store.
I really enjoy their work. They make engraving look easy when it actually has quite a few factors that come into play. Many things can switch and cause a problem, but the pyros at iEngraveStuff have it down to a science. They are continually improving their craft, which has been cool to see. If you want in on this action, look up iEngraveStuff on Instagram, Facebook, and iEngraveStuff.com.
Yep, that's the letter I,
and then engrave,
and then stuff.
iEngraveStuff.com.
So believe it or not, the song that I chose is actually not Breaking Benjamin. It's actually one of the oldies songs that I listened to as a kid growing up, and it's Bruce Springsteen. He's Bruce Springsteen. My dad loves him, and he would play his songs on road trips or whenever he's doing work, when he's doing paintings. But only one song has ever really stuck out to me. It's like whenever I hear it, I just instantly want to sing along with it. And the song is called Racing in the Street. And so I'll go ahead and say the lyrics. I got a 69 Chevy with a 396 Fuely heads and a hearse on the floor. She's waiting tonight in the parking lot outside the 7-Eleven store. Me and my partner Sonny built her straight out of scratch, and he rides with me from town to town. We only run for the money, got no strings attached. We shut him up and then we shut him down. Tonight, the strip's just right. I want to blow them off in my first heat. Summer's here and the time is right for racing in the street. We take all the action we can meet, and we cover all the northeast state. When the strip shuts down, we run them in the street, from the fire roads to the interstate. Some guys, they just give up living and start dying little by little, piece by piece. Some guys come home from work and wash up and go racing in the street. Tonight, the strip's just right. I want to blow them all out of their seats. Calling out around the world, we're going racing in the street. I met her on the strip 3 years ago in a Camaro with this dude from LA. I blew that Camaro off my back and drove that little girl away. But now there's wrinkles round my baby's eyes, and she cries herself to sleep at night. When I come home, the house is dark. She sighs, "Baby, did you make it all right?" She sits on the porch of her daddy's house, but all her pretty dreams are torn. She stares off alone into the night with the eyes of one who hates for just being born. For all the shut down strangers and hot rod angels rumbling through this promised land, tonight my baby and me, we're gonna ride to the sea and wash these sins off our hands. Tonight, the highway's bright. Out of our way, mister, you best keep. 'Cause summer's here and the time is right for racing in the street.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time.